Welcome to Inside the Castle, the podcast that goes behind castle doors to have real conversations with real people about solving the nation's toughest challenges.
I'm one of your hosts today, Angie Fairmuth.
I'm Aaron Snyder. Today's guests are Colonel Secrist and Tom Waters, who's the Director of Programs for the Middle East District. Thank you guys for joining us here today.
It's great to be here.
So today we're talking about the Middle East District, and we really want to get our listeners to have an understanding of what the Middle East District does, kind of what the mission is, and maybe if they're interested in going over there, what they could expect. But before that, we'd like to hear from the two of you as really just how did you get to this position with the Corps of Engineers? What brought you here, a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into the details about the district. So Colonel Secrist, we'll start with you.
Hey, great, Aaron. I appreciate the invite to participate today. Yeah, my name is Colonel Phillip Secrist. I'm the commander of the Middle East District for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I've been serving our country for 30 years, and 10 of which I've been assigned to U.S. Army Corps of Engineers organizations. The first of which was 2002 to 4. I was a PM forward with the Sacramento District, went over and served in the Iraq Provisional Command for a period of time. And then I've had the opportunity to command multiple districts and organizations within USACE. I've commanded the Philadelphia District, the Huntington District, the Mosul Dam Task Force, and then I've been blessed and fortunate that I'm now the commander since 2019 of the Middle East District.
Yeah, and this is Tom Waters here. I've had a lot of great jobs in the Corps, and just in short, I was in industry working for some great AE firms, and I got the opportunity to work with USACE, Baltimore District actually, on the DC Public Schools program. And it was as a contractor initially, and it was just one of the most rewarding opportunities that I had ever had in my career. And I literally thought at that point, I was like, what a great organization. So I actually became a Baltimore District employee, and then I was able to do the CONUS emergency management missions, debris missions, ice, water, power. And again, I thought, man, this is great, how USACE is, serving the nation. Then I had the opportunity to come over to the Middle East District and at the Transatlantic Division and work in Iraq for a few years as the deputy for electrical reconstruction. I also had a district, the North District, as well as the DPM there. And then I had the opportunity to go to War College and then come back to this district merely just by chance. Job openings and such. There are just so many rewarding opportunities in the Army Corps, and they're there for you if you want to take them. And that's what really, attracted me to it. It was more than just a job and just doing an engineering or a field project. It was really about all the opportunities for me. Thank you, guys. Great question.
Well, thank both of you for your service. We do appreciate all that you've done for the districts and the organization in our nation. I do want to get into the Middle East District and talking a little bit about that. But for our listeners, this might throw you for a loop. Typically, we're, all about the Civil Works mission set, but we felt it was important that we make sure everybody kind of has a better understanding of the breadth and depth of the Corps of Engineers. So we wanted to highlight the Middle East District today. And so, sir, can you tell us a little bit about the Middle East District and what your main missions are?
Thanks, Angie. The Middle East District, right? And I think the Corps of Engineers. As we know, the Corps of Engineers solves our nation's toughest challenges. Something that's unique about the Middle East District is we are solving not only our nation's toughest challenges, but those they share with the Middle East District countries. And that is really in our forces overseas, and that is regional stability and security throughout the Middle East. We have a significant responsibility to support that, create that through the infrastructure that we build, and then the relationships we build across the Middle East. So the Middle East District, USACE, had a footprint and a mission within the Mediterranean and the Middle East since about 1952. So we're right at the 70-year mark. The Middle East District and its current organization has been in existence since 2009. And we really do support the countries and our U.S. forces across the Middle East in various ways. Now, you have your standard MILCON programs where it's doing work, U.S.-funded projects for U.S. forces, and that's the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, our special operations forces in multiple countries across the Middle East. Then we have the uniqueness where we have the host nations over there actually fund projects and programs for U.S. forces that we also, host nation sponsored programs that we also do a lot of construction for that. And then the third type of work we do is primarily foreign military sales support, and that's a significantly large portion of our program, and that is really focused in on it's host nation funded, but it's for their own military infrastructure. It's doing projects. They purchase systems, weapon systems, air defense systems, aircraft from the U.S., and then many times they'll reach out, and as part of that FMS, Foreign Military Sales case, they will have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers do the construction for the infrastructure that supports that platform. Three really different infrastructure sets: U.S. funded for U.S. forces, host nation funded for U.S. forces, and then really the host nation funded for their own forces that we're involved with. So we have a lot of relationships that we lean on and develop over time within the U.S. DoD, Department of State, and then also with many, many host nation partners across the Middle East. And Tom, if you'd like to add anything, please do so.
Yeah, and just some context there is that, we do this in the CENTCOM area of responsibility, which is 22 countries. We're currently operating in one way or another. We have boots on ground in 8 countries and programs in 10 right now. Our area of operation is just around the size of the continental United States, including Alaska. So we're really looking at a very complex region with multiple countries. And when people hear Middle East, it's kind of a homogenized term, but every country is so unique and different. They have their own laws, regulations. And so, it really keeps our district on its toes, and it keeps everyone energized and fresh. As Colonel Secrist said, when you add up the countries and you add up the stakeholder set and customer set in every country, we're looking at, over 100 principal customers in all of these countries that we have to carefully manage and prioritize. So it's a fun and exciting mission. And then I just wanted to mention briefly that we are not a civil works district. Obviously, that is not our forte. We're heavy construction, vertical, horizontal, but we rely heavily on the USACE enterprise writ large. We work with over 20 districts right now and all of the centers of expertise because we're one of the smaller districts and we have to work across the enterprise. And so we've had water resource projects in Pakistan and Saudi, Egypt, potential work in Jordan. So when those opportunities come our way, we reach out to Huntington, to the RMC, to whoever, may be supporting us, really leverage the USACE enterprise for our civil works needs.
That's exciting. It seems like you guys have a pretty broad array of types of projects you work on that are going to be unique to many of the Corps staff, but then also talking about the large geographic area. Where exactly is the district office located?
A great question. I think, it's one of those we get a lot of times. So the district headquarters is physically located in Winchester, Virginia, which is about an hour and a half, pretty much west of downtown Washington, D.C. That's our headquarters. And then our footprint forward, as Tom said, we typically have people stationed in about 7 to 8 different countries and programs in as many as 10. We have about roughly 140, 150 folks that are forward deployed on TDY, or they're actually stationed in PCS in these various countries and such. And so we do a lot of traveling. The folks back here in the United States travel a lot overseas. It's been a challenge, of course, with COVID, but we continue to do it and support those programs. So that's our footprint, headquarters, and then forward footprint in that environment, and some really good living conditions.
Yeah, and the living conditions in many cases, this is a shameless plug for our district, for the folks that are going to listen, is that we have some exceptional overseas housing. They're westernized 5-star villa compounds that often have like full service, right? There's Olympic-sized swimming pools, there's gyms, there's restaurants. And then everywhere we work is, 99% of where we're working right now is permissible. and like Colonel Secrist said, where spouses and families can come. And lots of our folks who come over, they realize, there's a lot to do in the Middle East, and it's a quick hop over to other countries from the region for a long weekend. So a lot of our folks take advantage of that, and we really do struggle recruiting people because I think there's this, impression that the Middle East is a harsh place, but really it's a wonderful place with wonderful people, wonderful culture, and we provide great living conditions, great accommodations. In most countries, there's vehicles also available to people. So we really try to take care of our people, give them a great living opportunity. And then the work itself, we have some of the biggest projects, I think, in USACE right now in terms of construction projects. Colonel Secrist didn't mention that earlier, and I failed to as well. That for engineers out there and field personnel, contracting professionals, project managers, we have some of the most exceptional work that could come in anybody's career. And Colonel Secrist mentioned that when a foreign customer buys, say, THAAD missiles or Patriot missiles, F-15s, F-18s, F-16s, these are all foreign military sales cases that are active right now in our area of operation, and we are actively constructing, for lack of a better term, mega projects. We've completed an $800 million air defense force, brand new in the nation of Qatar. We're working on right now on a brand new F-15 air base that will ultimately receive around 72 F-15s. We are working on up to 17 sites in Saudi right now to provide interoperable THAAD capability with the U.S. So there are just so many groundbreaking projects for anybody that wants to come and jumpstart their career with us and have a good life out there in our various countries. We have a lot of great personal and professional opportunities for anybody that would be interested. And thank you guys for that shameless plug. Thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, I don't know about Aaron, but yeah, you almost sold me on the whole thing. That was a great plug.
I'm ready to sign you up.
I did want to go back to the missions that you talked about. You talked about two different missions, and so I think it's important to kind of help our listeners better understand those two missions.
But we do, the smaller, everyday, small dollar projects for our U.S. forces also. So it's everywhere from, think of operational needs like repairing runways, constructing dormitories and medical facilities, operations centers for our U.S. military forces, to a lot of quality of life. Also projects, smaller projects, but it's the theater on a base, it's the new shop at PX compound, it's the medical facility, it could be some recreational type facilities and stuff that's really focused on quality of life for our servicemen and women across all the services, right? And so you do have a extensive diversity of U.S. military programs work that we're doing in the Middle East for U.S. forces. It not only supports the real-world ongoing operations, directly supports those, but it also supports the quality of life for servicemen and women directly that are overseas at this point in time. That's really the military program in a nutshell. And again, it's across all services. The Air Force and the Army are our two biggest partners in that. And we do work in the Navy also, in the Marines, and then we also have some work for our Special Forces folks that we also execute on that program. Tom, you want to add anything else to that one?
No, I think you nailed that pretty good, sir. Okay.
And then as far as foreign military sales, there is foreign military finance, but that's a relatively small program. But foreign military sales, which is extensive, and that was what Tom was touching on, you have these significant capability systems that are being purchased for host nation military to strengthen their capabilities. And I think that's the key here, right, is, we're not just putting more U.S. forces in the Middle East and CENTCOM AOR, but really going after how do we strengthen the capabilities of our host nation military partners. And that's what a lot of these systems are for. And then they need the infrastructure to maintain those systems over the long haul. And that's one of the things, whenever we travel around the Middle East, as I said earlier in this discussion, USACE has had a footprint in the Middle East, in the Mediterranean and the Middle East since 1952. At one point in time, we had almost 3,000 servicemen, women, DA civilians running around Saudi Arabia. So we've done some extensive infrastructure in those countries and stuff. But as Tom and I travel, and we're going out, and a lot of these bases that we have this long relationship on or been, decades ago at, every time the host nation military partners talk about the enduring quality of the USACE work, it's always brought up. They'll take us into a facility, and they always talk about the enduring quality of the work we provide. And many of these facilities have been there for multiple decades. And so that's what they really are looking for us to continue to provide that level of quality in their military infrastructure. And we're doing that across all these countries. That is definitely with the Foreign Military Sales Program. That's what that gets after. That's what they expect from us, that high-quality professional work, and we deliver it for them extensively across the Middle East.
Earlier, you mentioned that you have over 100 principal customers across different countries. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. As an outreach specialist for the Corps for, 20 or more years, I always find it interesting on how we work with our partners in different parts of the Corps. And so I know that it's hard to build relationship capacity with, 10 customers, let alone 100. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sir, if I could take that one real quick.
Go ahead, Tom. Yep.
Yes, thanks, sir. So if you, and I'll just quickly, if you can imagine, right, you've got all the cents, right? You've got the CENTCOM, but then you've got RCENT, MARCENT, AFCENT. Multiply that by every country. Then there's the embassy. Then there's the equivalent organizations in terms of, might not be the Army. They call themselves in some countries the land forces and the Air Force, of course. So multiply every U.S. service component and every foreign service component. Then there's the other stakeholders, the OMCs, the embassies, and other mission partners that you pick up in some of these countries. There's some unique ones overseas that you wouldn't necessarily see in CONUS. That really forms the basis of our stakeholder. The only way we're successful is, we're not going to tell the Army you're not the number one priority, and then the Air Force is going to come and say, hey, this needs to be the number one priority. We really have to be a very flexible organization, but at the same time, we've built teams around missions, customers, and countries. And so while part of our organization, say engineering, right? Engineering gets a new design or a new requirement, and then they task it and they resource it and they execute it. But our project management and program management and contracting, they are set up by specific country teams, and so they only share those priorities. And so, we're able to have individuals in our organizations that will be champions for, the Air Force and the Army and Saudi Arabia. And then we have the rest of the organization aligned to, accomplish the workload writ large. Colonel Secrist, you could probably articulate a little bit better than I did there.
Well, that's excellent. I think it ties directly into, it's glad to see with, new Chief of Engineers, General Spellman, and one of his priorities, the partnering and strengthening relationships. I mean, so much of what we do, the only reason we can do that is because of the relationships we have in the Middle East and that partnering aspect. Whenever we're doing a host nation, foreign nation, if it's with their Ministry of Defense or their land forces or their aviation command or their Navy forces, we have that relationship, but it always ties back into our counterparts here with our own U.S. forces because they have an interest in what's going on with their respective partners in that arena. And then also we tie into, as Tom said, the embassies and the State Department, because all these embassies have a country plan, country strategy that they're trying to achieve, and they're bringing all the resources of the U.S. to bear to help achieve that. And it's really interesting to see how USACE is kind of in that sweet spot where we can kind of facilitate support in the Department of State, Department of Defense, and then, of course, the host nation military infrastructure. It's really a unique group of partners that we encounter and we have these relationships with.
You mentioned that you have multiple layers of Corps or Department of Defense offices that you're coordinating with as far as customers and partners go. Can you talk a little bit about that internally, how you manage to make sure that your comms are synchronized, and that everybody's driving towards the same goals with the partners?
That's a very, very good question. I think, at the district level, and our teams back here in Winchester, and then coordinating with our teams on the ground there, they really develop that localized relationship with a lot of those partners and those various organizations. If it's that are on the ground, if it's the host nation, land forces, they are plugged in and having established those relationships. Tom and I reinforce that when we travel and such. But then, like Tom said, we do have teams that manage the program for specific countries. And then and we also are working with those offices of military cooperation that are plugged in with the various U.S. embassies that we're coordinating with them. And then you have at the embassy and State Department level, we share relationships there, but then also our higher headquarters, the Transatlantic Division, General Colleton and the team there, they also manage those relationships with her counterparts at that level, and then also within the other general officers when it comes to the U.S. The CENTCOM, ARCENT, ABCENT, NABCENT, MARCENT, SOCCENT, their respective commands that they're plugged into. So it is echeloned. We do get pulled in. Just this 1 o'clock this morning, I was on a meeting with a general officer from a foreign nation in the Middle East and the projects that we're working on with them, because it's 9 o'clock their time in the morning, and that was the only time he could meet, right? So that happens on a regular basis. We are definitely coordinated at all kinds of levels with our partners over there.
Yeah, thanks. It definitely the coordination, communication, it seems like you guys have your hands full with that. But I was a little bit curious about the actual construction and some of the challenges that might happen with that side of the equation here. I feel like, maybe it's my view of the Middle East is flawed here, but sometimes you might not have the greatest infrastructure working around, or your supply chains could be a little different, or material availability is different. What kind of challenges do you see with the construction side of things, and how do you overcome some of those obstacles?
That's another great question, right? Yes, significant challenges. With construction, you have the environmental challenges. It can be somewhat harsh over there, certain months of the year. You also have challenges with material availability and working through those kind of challenges. You think about it, in the United States, there's a contractor base that used to working with USACE. And for us overseas, a lot of times we are in this constant developmental process of new contractors, host nation, foreign contractors that want to work on the foreign military sales projects. And so it does take some time to get to educate and get those contractors up to speed on USACE business practices. That's another challenge that we face on a regular basis. Tom, you want to weigh into that one also?
Yeah, I like to tell the new commanders, I say, hey, look, when you're in a CONUS district and you get hit by a hurricane, other districts come to your support. When we get hit by a hurricane, we're it. We're the show. When the flag went up to establish the mission in Afghanistan, the Middle East District, had its program, but had to take a good part of its workforce and stand up Afghanistan. When Iraq stood up, we stood up Iraq. When Mosul Dam Task Force stood up, we stood up Mosul Dam Task Force. So we also have that kind of there's a lot of volatility and churn in our AO, and we always, have to be flexible and agile enough to adapt to it. And I think our district's great because it's just required of us. Another one, and sometimes our countries don't get along. There was recently an embargo between some countries, and we couldn't get materials in to a country for some time, and we had to work other ports and routes through other parts of the world. There's just always these unique challenges that you never had before, that you think you've seen them all, but you get new ones every year. And that's just part of working in the Middle East and Central Asia. But it's also what makes this job so much fun and exciting, is that if you come spend a little time and work with us, we're going to make you tough and strong, mentally and physically. You're going to be a better person, having, spent some time with us for a year in the field or here at our headquarters in Winchester, Virginia. So lots of challenges, and you just never know what they're going to be.
It's definitely a growth opportunity for personal development. And as I stated earlier, I've been serving our country for 30 years as an Army officer. And I've commanded, 4 USACE organizations, 3 districts, and a task force. And I'm glad that I got the Middle East District at this point in my career, because it would be hard pressed to be able to serve in this district if it had been earlier in my career. It is very dynamic, a very unique problem set, challenging every day, but very, very rewarding. I mean, the pride that our folks have, the relationships you get to develop with many of these host nation partners over there are very unique and can be very, very rewarding as you deliver infrastructure for them, along with what you're used to, and that is typically a lot of USACE personnel get to work with U.S. forces here at CONUS and other places in the world. You still have those kind of relationships that you can continue to maintain, but it is definitely a worthwhile, rewarding experience to come here for growth on a personal level.
Again, I can't speak for Aaron, but I know that I have learned quite a bit just in our time together, and I really could talk to you guys all day about all of this because it's very interesting, but we are nearing the end of our time together, so I do want to offer you some last words. So if there's anything else that you would like our audience to know, now is the time.
Hey, thanks. Tom, I'll let you go first, and then I'll wrap it up. Thanks.
I really just want to get out there to the folks listening that we need good people. We've got some of the most challenging and complex engineering, construction, project management, contracting work, probably in USACE. So if there are folks out there that want to reach out and learn more about that, they can look us up at www.middleeastdistrict.com, or they can just Google Middle East District, and it'll pop right up, and it'll send them, and they can get our numbers, and they can contact us. I would personally love to talk to anybody that would be interested. That's all I got, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Tom. And for me, I think it goes back to, it is people and relationships, right? That is the one thing that I think of that has impressed me most about working in the Middle East District. It's the people we have here in Winchester, people we have that are willing to serve overseas, tying all that together, and then just the relationships that you get to work, support of U.S. forces. You're supporting war fighters that are currently supporting current operations in the CENTCOM area of responsibility. So you have those relationships on the ground. You can see what you're doing to get that airfield, that runway repaired, and how that supports the Air Force and their operations. And then you have the flip side of that is where, as we look to the future, the U.S. forces cannot be everywhere. And so what are we doing to strengthen our partners around the world, right? And I think a lot of what we do is about strengthening the capabilities of our host nation partners in the Middle East and CENTCOM AOR. As you bring their infrastructure in place and you see these systems that they're purchasing from the United States and how they are coming online, they are definitely true partners. They're not just relying on the U.S. to take care of their security and stability needs, but they're willing to step up and do it on their own. And so we're a big part of that. And that's just incredibly rewarding. It's for a guy that's been serving in the Middle East some way, shape, or form. A lot of us have for the last couple decades. It's good to see that ongoing development of those nations in the Middle East and how it supports not only their country objectives, but also the strategy of the United States government. So very, very rewarding. Can't do it without quality people. And as Tom said, we're always looking for the next project engineer, the next project manager, the next quality assurance representative, folks back here in the district itself. And we're always looking for new teammates. So please look us up, reach out to us, and we'd love to give you a chance to serve with USACE here in Winchester or overseas. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for being here today. This sounds like a fantastic opportunity for our staff, and hopefully those of you that are listening that are interested can reach out to the Middle East District and see what opportunities can be presented for you. But thank you, Colonel Secrist and Tom, for joining us today for this edition of Inside the Castle. We appreciate you and your insights. To our listeners, we want to hear from you, what topics are important to you and what people you're interested in hearing from. Until next time, be safe, be innovative, and be revolutionary. Thanks for joining us for this Inside the Castle podcast. To provide your feedback, email us at cw.infrastructure.team@usace.army.mil. Stay tuned for additional Inside the Castle podcasts as we explore life inside the Corps and revolutionize civil works together.